Welcome to today's interview. I am starting a series of interviews to shed light on the strategy consulting world, not only to make people understand what a strategy consulting career entails for those who want to undertake a strategy consulting career the most traditional way, that is to say, joining from analyst and getting to the partner level, but especially to shed light on the exit options that this career path offers. And today, in particular, we will talk about independent consulting. Today, I'm joined by Rodrigo Camacho, independent consultant with 6 years of experience, of which 2 in industry, 4 as a corporate strategy consultant, and 1 as an independent consultant. Rodrigo has started his strategy consulting career in a boutique firm, Cluster Advisory, based in Lisbon. He has then moved to Madrid to join Bain and Company. Still with Bain and Company, he has then moved to Qatar, where he has worked for approximately a couple of years. And early this year, he has then moved to Dubai, where he's now an independent consultant. Thank you for joining me today, Rodrigo.
Likewise, the pleasure is all mine.
So let's start from the very beginning. How did you get into strategy consulting?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be here. Back in the day, I did my bachelor's and master's in Portugal in both in economics. Had a super fun time. Found it quite interesting, but I had no idea what to do afterwards. I juggled around a bit, doing a couple of internships in car renting, private aviation, banking, even diplomacy. And roughly 1 year after my master's, I was chatting with a friend. I did not know what to do next. One of my internships was about to end. And he told me that there was this boutique consulting firm in Lisbon looking for people, Cluster Advisory, as you previously mentioned. I did not know much about consulting. You're more exposed to it in university if you take a management course, which I did not. I was always in economics. So I did not know what to expect, but then again, I had no idea what to do next. And so I thought, hey, why not? It ended up being a quite interesting experience working for Cluster. I was there for roughly 1 year. I've enjoyed my time there. The pace was quick. The intellectual stimulus was big. People were nice. And so I was happy. I was talking about this with a friend, and he told me like, hey, man, if you're into strategy consulting, then you should try to go to one of the big ones. My friend, at the time, he was working for Bain and Company in London. And he told me like, I can refer you to the recruitment process in Madrid. I know some people there, and let's see what happens. I was positive that I would not be accepted because I learned in the meantime that you have to prepare a lot, and the acceptance rates are quite low. So, my plan was actually to apply, fail, but learn a lot throughout the process, and then apply to maybe 3 or 4 other firms, and then actually get in. Turns out things didn't exactly go as I had planned. I entered in my first attempt, so I joined Bain. And there I stayed for almost 3 years. First in Madrid, in the Madrid office, and then in the Qatar office. That's pretty much how I got into strategy consulting.
And what kind of projects have you done during your time in both Bain and Cluster Advisory?
I follow the classical generalist path. So I juggled around in terms of geographies, in terms of industries, in terms of capabilities. For you to have a quick idea, I did corporate strategy, business models, financial modeling, commercial excellency, procurement, due diligences. I also, in terms of industries, I also juggled around. I started while at Cluster doing a lot of agriculture and agro processing. Then towards my later tenure at Cluster, I did a bit of energy, oil and gas. Then I moved to Bain, where I did energy, lots of advanced manufacturing. And lately, once I moved to the Middle East first, still with Bain, and now as a freelancer, I've done pretty much real estate on. So, I've changed quite a bit, even in
And
terms
why
of geographies. When I was at Cluster, I did projects for Portugal and Angola. While at Bain, I did projects for the US, Switzerland, Peru, Spain, Portugal, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. And now, as a freelancer, I'm only working in the Middle East, so UAE and Saudi Arabia again. So as you can see, has been a pretty diverse path.
Absolutely. And so a wide variety of industries and geographies that you have worked in. What skill set has strategy consulting allowed you to develop?
So in my experience, the first skill that I got was definitely a strong work ethic and some hierarchical awareness. While you're there, you learn how to work many hours, plenty of hours, under permanent stress, and while at the same time producing outcome which has to meet high expectations. Simultaneously, the hierarchical awareness part is that although consulting firms are quite open, so you can speak with everyone in your team, from the analyst to the partner, when it comes to decisions, everyone's input is taken into consideration, obviously, but there's a strong hierarchical way of doing things. And so at the end of the day, if the partner decides that we're going direction A, that's where we're going. If analysts think it's clever to do X, but the manager decides to do Y, we're going to do Y. And so also learning that it's nothing personal, it's just how things are. That's also one of the things that I think I got with my first years as a consultant. I would also highlight maybe at Bain is called the zero defect skills. So being super aware of details and making sure that whatever it is that you deliver is actually bulletproof and has no mistakes. And then I would say that consulting, generally speaking, kind of teaches you how to cope with and how to solve really complex problems. Just you panic for a bit, have no idea how to solve what the client has just asked you, but then you use the methodology that you've learned. You try to break the problems into small bits. You then try to create like a steering path of how you're going to solve each one of those smaller problems. And so I think that's something that's quite valuable, not only for consulting, but for life as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And moving on, independent consulting is one of the most underrated options coming out from strategy consulting. And to be honest, it's shocking to me knowing how much remunerative it is, and how much flexibility it allows you to do, because you can choose your own projects. You can choose pretty much how long to work, because if you want to undertake a project and then take a break, it is also possible. So can you tell us how you first heard about independent consulting or freelance consulting, and why then you decided to pursue this kind of career?
It is indeed a quite unknown career path, because I think there's a quite logical reason for it. It's because it's quite niche. So you need to be a former consultant of a given set of firms, and just because of that, it's obviously something that you cannot enter if you didn't work for those firms first. So it's a quite niche thing. But even within those firms, some people are not aware that it exists, and some are, but I think they do not know exactly how it works. My first contact was while I was at the boutique in Lisbon cluster. Because although I was a typical full-time employee for them, and there was a big bulk of people that were, they also hired externally. They also hired freelancers, and so that was like my first contact. So I understood that they didn't work for Cluster on a permanent basis, but I didn't know much more. And then once I joined Bain, although Bain did not use freelancers as extensively, I did work with a few, and then I learned exactly how it was, how it worked, how much you could make, how was the lifestyle basically, and that was pretty much my first contact. And then the reason why I decided to pursue this career path at the moment was because I was playing. I felt that I needed something new, and the reality is that there are some advantages working as a freelancer. I'd say first and foremost, you have a high degree of independence. So you can steer your own life. You can decide when to work and when not to. Obviously, if you work less, you make less money. That's how it works. But you can obviously use that extra free time to devote yourself to pursuing other things that you like. So I'd say that was number one. And then the second part was the financial aspect of it. In a nutshell, these were the two main ones. Yeah.
Okay. And touching upon the remunerative aspect that you have just mentioned, can you tell us what's the range of day rate that are currently valid in Dubai according to the different levels?
It will depend on, it's a project by project thing, and also a region by region thing. So it also shifts a lot. I'd say it shifts according to the nature of the project, to the nature of the client, to how senior you are, to the region. But whether you're an analyst or a manager, I think a daily rate can go anywhere from 500 USD to more than 3,000 USD.
Okay, cool. And so you mentioned that you develop certain skills in strategy consulting. You can then deploy them into independent consulting. So and today we hear a lot of debate in terms of work-life balance, the fact that people want to become more independent and want to be more owning their own work and their work outputs. Why do you think it is still worth to pursue a career in strategy consulting and as an independent consultant?
I would say that the main positives of strategy consulting are for sure the intellectual stimulus that comes along. I'm not saying that every project is going to be interesting, but the reality is you are exposed to a high stakes, high stress environment where what you do actually matters. You're exposed to many different industries, which is something that's not going to happen if you pursue the typical corporate job. And you're hired to do quite different things. And so you're in terms of intellectual stimulus, I think it's quite hard to find in the business world, at least, something that's as good as strategy consulting. On top, you typically have a really fast career progression. So you're promoted on a regular basis. Something that's quite important for me is there's actually clarity in when and how you're going to get promoted. So you know that typically you'll be promoted in 1 year, 2 years. You know how much you're going to make from analyst to partner. So those are things that I value a lot. And I'd say the last one is it's a good investment because at the end of the day, you may love it, you may hate it, but you have a really good stamp on your resume. And so at the end of the day, if you want to leave and look for something else, it's not like you're not going to use the skill set that you learn. You are, and typically firms value a lot people that have gone through this experience.
Okay. So you say from the exit perspective, the fact that you have worked for consulting firms is a stamp of quality that allows you to open up doors, either in independent consulting or in other areas. It eases that process of transition from strategy consulting to whatever you want to do afterwards.
Definitely. I'd say especially if you work for a company that has a well-known reputation. That happens a lot. Basically, ever since I worked for Bain, even now as a freelancer, you get tons of headhunters, random people just inviting you to recruitment processes, which was something that did not happen to me before.
Mm.
So, having a really strong name on your resume definitely helps a lot.
Okay, cool. And instead, coming back to your story, right? You moved around a lot. You started in Lisbon, then you moved to Madrid, then you did a big jump to Arab countries, so you moved to Qatar, and now in Dubai. What was the biggest cultural shift that you experienced?
Yeah, so I'd say that definitely Qatar. The reality is that moving from Lisbon to Madrid culturally speaking, is it's no shock at all.
Mm.
Obviously, things are not equal, but they're super similar. I would say the only thing that I've kind of felt at the beginning was the language. But then again, you know, for a Portuguese, learning Spanish is quite easy.
Mm.
But it didn't happen on day one. And so it took me like, I think, if I recall correctly, I think it took me like 4 months, maybe 5 months, or yeah, 5 months to actually feel super comfortable speaking. Now, I'm not saying that now I speak fluently as a Spaniard, but I definitely can speak at ease. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I knew at all times that I was making words up, just kind of adapting Portuguese words into Spanish with some Spanish accent, or just using English because I did not know how to say the words in Spanish. So I would say that was the only thing that I felt. When I moved from Madrid to Doha in Qatar, the shift is big because on the one hand, it's a city that's super convenient. Everything is easy if you have money. So
Mm.
to move around in the city, either via your own car, or if you use Ubers or even public transportation, it's super easy to get by. Everything is quite clean. You have a big variety of supermarkets, restaurants, bars, clubs. Um, and so life is easy on the one hand. On the other, there's the weather. It's like super, super hot, and that was. I mean, I was expecting it, but it's a big difference, and it's not as big as one would expect, and it's not easy to know that many people. Like I was there for half a year or so, and I can count with my hand the number of friends that I did there. Um, I'd say that would be the major caveat of living in Qatar is it's hard to have a really active and social life,
Mm.
which is something that I enjoy and that I had both in Madrid and Lisbon.
I think it's probably also due to, our the European ways of socializing. We used to go to bars, and have drinks with our friends. And I know that in Doha, in Qatar, there are a lot of restrictions in terms of drinking outside. You can do that, but probably just in specific locations like hotels and so on. So that probably has a big impact on the way that we are used to socialize and hence to find new people and meet new people in Doha. Would you?
Yeah, I think that in Doha, just to clarify, as you said, you can that does exist, so you can actually go for a beer or go to a club. It's simply not as widespread as in Europe. So you have to do it always in hotels or in quite specific locations. And I think the big thing is the amount of people is simply small.
Mm.
So the amount of people that actually do that, if you take the people that go clubbing and then you kind of take out all the people that are not like either below or above 5 years below or 5 years above your age or something. And then if you take those people out, there's not that many people left.
Mm.
And obviously,
Yeah.
if you take into consideration similar interests and activities and so forth, the sample is really small. So I say I see my time in Qatar as a positive experience for sure. But for someone that's thinking about going there, I
Mhm.
wouldn't understate this particular part. So I knew a couple of people that were there for like 10 years, and obviously they had their social life well established. But for someone that's just about to begin their experience there, the first couple of months can be hard for sure.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
and then finally, after Qatar, I moved to Dubai. And here, it's different because although it's super close to Doha, um, I think I always tell people that Dubai is somehow similar to London, but super hot.
Mm.
So it's a true melting pot. I mean, I have no idea how many people live here at the moment. I think over like 5 million people. But anyways, it's super dynamic. Everything is happening at the same time. Lots of conferences, parties, events. Everyone is running around. There's lots of noise, lots of traffic, lots of everything. And so, if that's your thing, it's a really nice place to be. It's quite easy to meet new people, to have a really active social life. And so, the difference here versus Qatar, I think it's that one, is the dimension of it. And so I would say the shock is not as big for a European here in Dubai as it is in Qatar.
Okay. And in terms of ways of working instead, how do Arab countries differ from European countries, from your experience?
So I don't want to mislead anyone. I would say it differs,
Mm.
but if you are a consultant, it does not differ that much because, first of all, people are quite often not from the Middle East. So you're working with people from India, from Europe, from Africa, from Latin America. And so the culture gets kind of mixed, such as pretty much as it works in Europe. Obviously, there were some cases where if you have a higher presence of certain nationalities, you can feel a bit more the local culture. But then again, in consulting, that's not actually common. I would say maybe if you work on a regular corporate job with only people that are locals, then maybe you can feel it a bit. But I would say that for a consulting person, that's typically not the case.
Mm. Probably because also consulting firms tend to have uniform ways of working that probably are, transversal and hence not differ a lot from country to country. Maybe that is also a factor. Um,
Yeah, and on that, I think that even locals that might initially work differently, then these people went to study in the States or in the UK, and then did an MBA in INSEAD or whatever. And so at the end of the day, you're working regardless of whether people are, you're working on a really big common base typically.
Moving on, one of the reasons why people decide to leave strategy consulting is poor work-life balance. How was the work-life balance in your experience, both in the corporate strategy consulting and now as an independent consultant?
Yeah, so if you compare the work-life balance of a corporate consulting, I mean by corporate I mean working for a big consulting firm on a
Correct.
permanent position basis, it's obviously not as good as if you were working for the industry for sure. So it's not a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6, and to be honest, I haven't met a single person that thought it was. So if you're getting in, you know how it works. And then I think in my case, I was lucky because 90% of the time I was working on projects that were, at least from a consulting perspective, sustainable. Um, but obviously, those that were not do take a toll. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to exit the corporate consulting world and become a freelancer. I had heard that the work-life balance could be slightly better, and from my personal experience, it is because you can actually manage your hours better. You don't have to take care of the bureaucratic and political stuff that you do when you are in a consulting firm. But I would say more importantly is regardless, even if you have a really hard project, you can just then take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks off if you want in between projects. And for me, that's the biggest advantage is that if you're super burned out, you can just go for a big holiday wherever you want, and that's fine. I would say that's the biggest advantage.
Okay. So the freedom of time, the fact that you can select which projects to undertake and not undertake, also the option to take breaks, and the fact that you don't have to do all the additional tasks in terms of, I don't know, growing the practice or doing recruiting and so on. So all those activities are, of course, not done when you are a freelancer. Okay. So now that you are in Dubai, right, how do you find projects in freelance consulting?
I would say mainly I would say there's three ways. There's one which I don't use as much, but I'll go to that in a second. So I would say the most common in the Middle East is through agencies that actually reach out to you. So you enroll in their websites, in their WhatsApp groups, and if you get accepted, then they start proactively sending you projects. Some send you only the projects that are suitable for you. The other ones send you all their projects, and you have to navigate and see whether there's one or two that actually make sense, given your profile. But that's the typical way that people get projects here. The second is your word of mouth. So you start working for a couple of people, then these people typically know other people that need consultants, and so they tell them, "Hey, I've worked with Gianmarco, and he's a really good guy." So and that works and happens a lot. Lastly, and still in the word of mouth, it also happens a lot that people reach out proactively through LinkedIn because they've heard of you from an acquaintance. So that happens a lot. And lastly, the thing that I don't use as much are, I would call them marketplaces for projects. I don't use it as much from personal experience. They don't work effectively. So you can apply to many opportunities, even those that seem tailor-made to you, but then you never hear back. They don't reach out to you saying, giving you updates or whatever. So from my personal experience, they don't work as well. I'm not saying they don't work at all. They have to, right, for someone. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. But, my personal experience tells me, at least in the region, those are not the way to go.
Okay, cool. And how, now that you have experience both in strategy consulting as a corporate person, let's say, and as an independent consultant, how do you see yourself in the future?
Yeah, I'd say that's a tricky question. I really don't know. Typically, say to people that being a freelancer is a good place to be when you don't know what to do, right? Because commitments are typically on a 1 month, 2 month, 4 month basis. You can make money while you're thinking about what to do next. And you can enjoy your free time and travel, pursue other hobbies. As an example, at the moment, I've just finished a book that I'm trying to get published. And so those are the types of things that when you work as a consultant, it's quite hard for you to do. And those are the things that I enjoy now during my free time. I think a couple of things that I thought about was maybe doing an MBA or a PhD. But then again, there's nothing set in stone still. So only time will tell.
Cool. And what advice would you give to someone who wants to start freelancing as a consultant?
I would say it's not for everyone. It's first of all, it's something I really enjoy and I recommend, but it's not for everyone. So I would say my first recommendation would be to speak with as many freelancers as you can to understand how's their lifestyle and what are the pros and cons. And secondly, I would just say, like, think about how would you feel working as a freelancer. Do you cope well with uncertainty? Are you able to withstand months of no projects because the market is down? Are you okay with seeing your bank statement go down and down and down because there's no money coming in? those things are important as a freelancer, because typically you will see your bank account going up and going up a lot, but that's not always the case. And so you should be prepared to withstand those types of situations.
So, what differences have you found between working as a corporate consultant versus as a freelance consultant?
So first of all, I'd say that the job is quite similar. However, from personal experience, I felt one big difference that yields some other stuff, which is, for example, when I was at Bain or at Cluster, you are part of their generalist roster. So if there's a project and they need to put in someone, and let's say the project is on the energy industry, if they have people with energy experience, that's perfect. If they don't, they're going to put someone else, and that's it. And so at the end of the day, you juggle, as I previously mentioned, juggle around between industries and so forth and capabilities. As a freelancer, you're typically hired to work on projects that have something to do with the projects that you did before. So you come in with expertise. And that's number one. You're hired as a somewhat expert, not necessarily as a subject matter expert, but as someone that knows what he's doing because it has done it before. That yields a bigger share of voice in the project for sure, and a higher degree of independence. I would say that's the only difference that I can relate,
Okay,
comparing both.
amazing. Thank you so much, Rodrigo, for your time. And if people want to contact you, I'm gonna leave your contact details in the description of this video and in the other social media. Thank you again.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Gianmarco.